Hi, I'm Anna Denton-Jones, and in this second video of Knowledge November, I'm going to be talking about sort of red flags that can emerge when you're dealing with performance issues. So in the first video last week, we talked about some of the reasons why somebody might not be performing, mainly focusing on the organisation and the way in which it's created the right environment, if you like, for the employee to be able to do their job. In this session, I want to look at some of the things that might be going on that we need to have our antenna working to pick up on, so that we don't just focus on the sort of in-work side of things, that we are looking, if you like, at the whole employee. And I think it's really important to start off by saying we encourage people these days, when we're looking at diversity and inclusion and issues like that, to bring their whole selves to the workplace. And of course, in doing that, we're not employing robots. We may have robots, but we also have people. Humans are messy. And they do have outside of work stuff, caring responsibilities, relationship breakdowns, worries about things. So we can't just box off anymore, I don't think, things that are outside work and sort of pretend that those things aren't having an influence. Obviously, employers can't be responsible for all of that stuff, because that would be shifting too much away from the employee's own responsibility for managing those things onto the employer. But what the employer can be doing is supporting their people in work to signpost them in the right direction of support, to make sure that when things are challenging outside of work, that we are, for example, offering counselling and showing some understanding about the bigger picture, perhaps, when we are looking at those sorts of issues. So I guess it's recognising, I suppose, the energy that perhaps might otherwise we want to be directed into the job, maybe being focused somewhere else, and being able to then talk to the person concerned about that. So one of the red flag issues that I'm talking about when I'm saying your antenna needs to be sort of alive to these things, health, disabilities in particular, will be something that whenever we're managing an employee for any reason, we need to be alive to. And sometimes it is only when we start talking to somebody about their performance that they will then raise something that's going on with them from a health perspective. And that might mean that we need to press pause whilst we find out some more about that health issue, before we just sort of plough onwards with our performance management tools, particularly at this point in time, coming off the back of the pandemic. I'm thinking about people's mental health. Stress at work seems to be a big topic, even more so now, I suppose, than before the pandemic, because I think people are tired and people are fragile, and the way in which we're all working is changing, and that is putting different stresses and strains on people. So undoubtedly, whenever we're looking at performance, we need to be looking at that as an issue, I think, and reassessing whether the job that we're asking somebody to do is realistic. Certainly everybody that I've spoken to recently is complaining about how their job has just become a different beast to before the pandemic. And I think that puts a responsibility on organisations to start saying, And do we need to look at the way in which we're designing these jobs? So just pick up on that issue. I think with the cost of living crisis, more and more people are likely to be worrying about their finances. I know employers are looking at what they can do to support in that area, but potentially we might have more people trying to work more than one job as people try and meet the challenge themselves. That leads us into the territory of what do we say as an organisation about those things? What rules have we got in place? Are people able to have those second jobs, or do we put some guardrails around those sorts of things? Something that may be influencing performance, which we may not know about, may be outside of work, stuff around things like domestic violence and sort of coercive control. So we need to be alive to exploring if there is something outside of work that can be affecting somebody's ability to concentrate and do well in work. Certainly alcohol and drugs consumption, whether that's legal highs or illegal substances, may well be affecting somebody's performance. I think often people think that conduct, if you like, outside of work doesn't affect the workplace. But if you speak to any medic around consumption of alcohol or drugs, they'll start to talk you through what the effects might be on somebody's ability to remember things, process things in their brains, concentrate, all of those sorts of things. So that might be a red flag that we need to think about. So part of our job when we're talking to people about performance is to try and unpick what else might be there. I think if we're in HR, we also need to be unpicking what else might be there when we're talking to line managers. So why is the line manager wanting to manage performance when they come to you talking about that? I'm thinking about a recent sex discrimination case that I read about in the banking sector, where pretty much as soon as the employee announces that she's pregnant, management then start to talk about whether they need to manage that person's performance. So the sort of first time that performance has been mentioned is it's in with that background there. Obviously that would be a red flag to me at that point, that it's only just emerging once somebody has told you that they're pregnant, and that might not be a good thing. So again, it's looking at all the pieces of the jigsaw, isn't it, to see what else may